On every battlefield, there is one force feared beyond any other. That force is surprise. An ambush by a weapon, a tactic never before seen. Developed in secret, employed in secret, and now ready to devastate in ways not yet known. Secret weapons. On this episode, Firestorm.
For Secret Weapons, John Palmer.
One secret of war that nobody has ever been able to unravel is our attitude toward fire. We quickly found the mushrooming dum-dum bullet too horrendous and outlawed it. After one repulsive look at poison gas in World War I, we banned that too. Is fire kinder to a soldier or to a civilian than those two horrors? In any event, military men have applied great genius to the application of fire in battle, and we will examine all of its unsettling secrets.
For centuries, Byzantine warriors kept enemy troops and ships at bay with a top-secret weapon called Greek fire. A mixture of naphtha, quicklime, and saltpeter, it became raging liquid flame when combined with water. World War I brought the enormous infantry weight of conscripted armies to bear. Before the establishment of trench lines and the realization that massed artillery and the new machine guns could stop any attack, the frantic weapons designers went back to the past for an answer. They buried fuel tanks in the ground in front of lines that were under siege. Huge nozzles were fixed in place and hand pumps supplied high pressure. The attacking troops were greeted by a terrifying, impenetrable wall of flame. Survival was not just unlikely, but impossible. The rate at which trenches began to change hands quickly made the flamethrower too cumbersome to use as a fixed weapon. But development continued to move forward on all fronts.
Petroleum had hardly begun to power the first primitive automobiles before secret weapons designers saw the answer to the terrible problem of eliminating heavily sandbagged trenches and dugouts. The backpack flamethrower had several immense advantages. It didn't have to be aimed any more accurately than a garden hose on wide spray.
On the battlefields of World War II, the jellied gasoline, fired more than 23 meters under the pressure of inert nitrogen gas, flowed into trenches and found its way into the tiniest firing slits. The flamethrower could asphyxiate by removing all of the oxygen in a closed dugout as handily as it could burn out the occupants.
Best of all, animal terror of the new secret weapon induced the surrender of many brave men who would have laughed at bullets. What was not a secret was that captured flamethrower operators were treated most unkindly.
The workings of a flamethrower were elegantly simple. Pressure in the backpack tank fed fuel into the hand nozzle. Hand pressure withdrew a pintle valve while releasing a spring-loaded igniter at the muzzle. After their desperate evacuation from the beaches at Dunkirk, another kind of fire loomed for the British. In the summer of 1940, Hitler began planning a seaborne invasion of England. It was left to the bombers of Hermann Göring's Luftwaffe to soften the British will to fight. It soon became obvious that the light two-engine bombers of the German Air Force could not deliver enough high explosives on British targets to affect either production or morale. The German Ordnance Lab set to work to develop a bomb that would break British will with one elemental terror: fire. Germany pioneered the night fire raid and its weapons. The basic German incendiary was just under 2.5 pounds. A single plane could scatter hundreds of the hideous little bombs. The primary role of the hot-burning thermite interior was to set fire to the magnesium casing of the bomb, magnesium making an unquenchable, all-igniting fire. An afterthought explosive charge was just enough to discourage the firefighters. As bad as the damage was, the skill and courage of the English fire brigades made the conflagrations containable. While London and other English cities burned, Britain's secret weapons designers took careful note of what they must do to increase the destruction when their day came.
Coming up next, fly high with the B-52 bomber on Firepower.
It was best in show at the North American International Auto Show. It has more room than the Infiniti Q45 and more horsepower than the BMW 525i. It has dual airbags and a built-in fold-down child seat. Where this car is made is not nearly as important as where it's sold. Introducing the Chrysler Concorde, the renaissance of the American car.
What makes the Budget Gourmet so different?
Things that make you go, mmm.
It's a lustier lasagna. Sirloin splashed with soy. Saucy shrimp nestled in linguine. All this for under $2. Entrees from the Budget Gourmet. It's budget, it's gourmet, it's both.
You know, you look like the smart, successful type. Just the type to appreciate Sprint's remarkably easy calling program the most. It saves you big on whoever you call the most each month. 36% when that person has Sprint. And you don't have to sign anyone up. It's all automatic. Of course, a smart, successful guy like you probably already has the most. Or did you just inherit all that money?
If your VCR is a pain to program, then get rid of it. And get the RCA VCR with VCR Plus built in. To record a show, just look for the VCR Plus code in your TV listing. Then punch it in. It's as simple as that. So if you had it with your old VCR, get rid of it. And get the new one with cable box channel control. The first VCR that changes channels on your cable box. Finally, a VCR that everyone can program.
After World War II, the U.S. entered a time of peace, or so we thought. See why post-war America entered another war. Watch Korea, the Forgotten War. Sunday at 9 Eastern, only on the Discovery Channel.
With infantry getting better and better at the tricks of avoiding the straight-line fragments of exploding ordnance, something had to be found to drift down upon sheltered troops with devastating effect. The designers came up with what soldiers have come to refer to with dread as Willie Peter, or white phosphorus. Phosphorus burns hellishly and inextinguishably. It burns with incredible heat, even when it's underwater. An enemy contaminated by just a single down-drifting speck may suffer deep, disabling burns. It's also used in rockets and artillery shells. The descending streamers and clouds that signify white phosphorus are considered one of the battlefield's ugliest sights by infantrymen. The close and intense small unit fighting that characterized the World War II Pacific Island campaigns made them the domain of fire-based weapons. White phosphorus grenades filled the air with drifting destruction that drove the enemy from positions that only the heaviest ordnance might otherwise have penetrated. No matter how well fortified an enemy bunker was, it had two indispensable Achilles heels, firing slits and ventilation openings. Into these, the weapons laboratory sent increasingly longer burning and better penetrating mixtures from backpack flamethrowers. Of course, being a flamethrower man with a bulky, highly visible backpack loaded with volatile fuel was no profession to grow old in. Then, the inventors came up with an answer. Tanks were outfitted with armored trailers carrying about 400 gallons of combustibles. These were pressurized and fed through a tube fixed to the tank's main gun. The flame could be projected over a 150-yard area in flooding quantity. These tanks, irreverently called Zippos after the cigarette lighter, spearheaded the invasion of the larger Japanese-held islands like Saipan, Iwo Jima, and Okinawa. Staying close behind a flame-throwing tank was as near to heaven as a Marine could get. In Europe, the remorseless British Air Chief, Sir Arthur Harris, had been dogging his ordnance planners for never-before-tried tactics to destroy a city by fire. By mid-1943, Harris had the plan before him. The target, Hamburg, the great German industrial center, a city about to be scarred forever in body and soul. Known as Operation Gomorrah, the series of night raids were to continue for 10 days. An especially diabolic part of the plan called for the annihilation of the rescue, firefighting, and shelter systems with which great cities defend themselves. Hamburg was not an easy target. In addition to its bristling air defense system, well-equipped emergency services were at the city's disposal. But the more than 700 British bombers were well drilled in their protocol of destruction. When the first incendiaries brought out Hamburg's firefighters in force, the British trap was sprung. 1,000-pound high-explosive bombs rained down to tumble major structures, filling the streets with rubble and blocking the fire engines and other emergency equipment. Then 4 and 8,000 pounders fell to open the gas mains and knock out the water system. Delayed action bombs drove off the rescue personnel. Now the real incendiary shower began, and Hamburg burned as no city ever had before. In a firestorm, a white-hot core generated by a massed incendiary drop causes huge amounts of burning gases to rocket skyward. Air at ground level is sucked toward the fire center with hurricane force to create the precise oxygen force-feeding effect that powers a blast furnace. A lethal, unquenchable cycle. Trees and people flew like twigs into the heart of the sucking fire. 70% of the city's firefighters were casualties. Hamburg citizens smothered in their shelters. The 1,500-degree temperatures destroyed 60% of the houses. 41,800 civilians perished in the searing hell. Before the age of the smart missile, aircraft ground support was a hit and usually miss thing. And when the enemy was scattered or dug in, it was almost a waste of time. A way had to be found quickly to take the pressure off the Marines trying to rout out powerfully entrenched defenders of the Pacific Islands. The desperate Navy pilots ginned up their own secret weapon. To get the basic idea off the ground, they filled old drop tanks with gasoline, jellied with by guess and by gosh formulas, and unloaded them on the enemy. The results were so spectacular that chastened weapons designers quickly came up with aerodynamically designed canisters and a scientific formula to get the most spread, run, heat, and stick out of the rolling fireball. Some of the ingredients were naphthene and palmitate, so they called the new secret weapon napalm.
Napalm was the one weapon that consistently caused elite enemy troops to break. Its ability to obliterate everything in its boiling path was psychologically crushing. In the mountains of North Korea, after the Red Chinese had joined the war against the United Nations Army, the backward reeling UN forces were being inundated by powerful Chinese attacks, often at night. No amount of firepower seemed able to blunt the Chinese disdain of destruction. Until napalm arrived. UN planes swept down on the enemy and unloaded their deadly canisters. Eventually, the fiery attacks burned out the Chinese spirit and helped halt their advance. In the Vietnam War, the North Vietnamese sought to replicate their earlier victory over the French at Dien Bien Phu by establishing unbreakable sieges over American units isolated at remote fire bases. Early in 1968, from the hills surrounding the firebase at Khe Sanh, North Vietnamese regulars began their attack with a merciless artillery and mortar barrage against the U.S. Marine garrison. The 77-day siege was met with Marine artillery and relentless air attacks that included the use of a new and deadlier napalm. NVA units were bathed with oceans of flaming polystyrene, benzene, and gasoline. A new, longer-burning, freer-flowing cocktail dreamed up by the secret weapons men. This devastating close air support eventually broke the siege. Napalm had played a key role in the American victory at Khe Sanh. But the ultimate application of fire in war had come from the skies over Japan on a March evening in 1945. We'll revisit those grim events in a moment.
Coming up next, fly high with the B-52 bomber on Firepower.
The suspension system in the Oldsmobile 98 is engineered to provide you with a level of comfort that's virtually unheard of. The 98 from Oldsmobile. The power of intelligent engineering.
Visit your local dealer and get great deals on every model during Oldsmobile's 95th birthday celebration.
Ooh, darling, I need you so. Never ever gonna let you go. 'Cause I'm the one for you. Hey, I'm the one.
Capture the ones you love without missing out on the fun yourself with a Sony Handycam, America's most popular camcorder.
In 1989, a group of filmmakers chronicled an unprecedented journey across a part of the world few had ever seen. What they captured on film is an odyssey you'll never forget. From historic St. Petersburg to post-Tiananmen, China, take a ride on the Trans-Siberian Railroad and witness a Russia you've never known. The Red Express, tonight at 10 Eastern, exclusively on the Discovery Channel.
Santa Claus is coming to town.
Santa Claus is coming to town, along with Frosty the Snowman and Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer.
Okay, Rudolph, full power!
Now you can light up the holiday season for your children again and again with 3 of the best-loved original Christmas classics ever, all from Time Life Video.
Have a holly jolly Christmas.
All these magical characters are back again for your kids or grandchildren to enjoy.
Frosty the Snowman was alive.
A Child's Video Christmas, selected by Time Life as the best in children's holiday entertainment, and all for $39.99. So call now for all the warmth, wonder, and great music, too. Here's how to order.
To order your child's video Christmas, have your credit card ready and call 1-800-641-1166 or send $39.99 plus $4.50 shipping and handling to Child's Video Christmas, P.O. Box 1880, Department 9, Alexandria, Virginia 22313.
The strategic bombing of Japan ran into a problem not met in Germany, where the industrial might was concentrated in just 12% of the major urban centers. The Japanese had dispersed their war machine in a widespread welter of home workshops. High-altitude bombers delivering high explosives were secretly suffering ugly losses with no knockout punch in sight. The necessity of destroying one of the world's great cities in its entirety spawned a secret operation built around the only existing weapon that could possibly do such a job: fire. Fire applied on a scale that would dwarf even what the A-bombs would do.
The new chief of the 21st Bomber Command, Major General Curtis E. LeMay, didn't wait long to tell the secret tactics planners to throw away the book. LeMay wanted fire to do what it never had before: produce the most horrendously effective military operation in the history of warfare. The B-29 air crews paled at their instructions. The raids would be at night. The gunners, their guns and ammunition would be gone. The resulting weight reduction would go into bombs. The planes would go in at a dead low 5,000 to 7,000 feet. Tokyo's searchlights could now do the job for the anti-aircraft crews that the inferior Japanese radar had failed to do. The tons of fuel weight saved by not having the planes assemble and climb high would go into incendiaries. In the late afternoon of March 10th, 1945, 300 B-29s headed for Tokyo, prepared to inflict on the Japanese capital a new, secret, untried fire weapon. By the spring of 1945, Tokyo had already been the target of punishing American airstrikes. Its population density was 3 times that of the largest German cities. Firefighting methods were outdated and inadequate. Water and manpower were scarce. The city's private dwellings were flimsy and crammed together. The Tokyo Fire Department, bitterly experienced in both peace and war, depended on raw bravery. In action, a standard bearer placed a flag at a spot beyond which the fire would not be permitted to advance. If it did, he stayed with the flag. On a beautiful evening, the first B-29 Pathfinders appeared over the city. As Tokyo's 10,000 guns opened up, the lead planes dropped napalm bombs to mark a 4-by-3-mile target area. The 29s that followed dropped 500-pounders that opened at 50 feet to release a shower of jellied gasoline incendiaries. Individual fires soon merged into a mass of howling flame. The main pumping station was knocked out. The river was too shallow to supply firefighting water. With the ground winds approaching a powerful 30 miles per hour, the fire began to roll, to run before the wind like a long, curling ocean wave. Miles wide, it reached up to more than 20 stories. The fire didn't spread, it exploded forward, leaping hundreds of feet in searing fireballs. 130,000 people perished in the Tokyo firestorm. In the 5 months of war remaining, Japan's civilian casualties would be twice those suffered by her military during 44 months of crippling combat. Some final secrets about fire in war as we come near the close of the century. It might have looked like both sides deigned the use of napalm in the Gulf War for humanitarian reasons. But word had gotten around that American B-52s were ready to unload a new, improved formula as soon as the enemy threw the first match. So maybe there was another reason for the hesitation. Happily, the fire weapon no longer figures largely in plans for attacks on cities. Kinder and gentler? Well, not really. Planners simply estimate there are no longer many major cities of sufficiently flammable construction to warrant firebombing. Why not? They were rebuilt of fire-resistant materials after being burned down in previous wars. Until next time, I'm John Palmer.
Built for precision strikes behind enemy lines, the B-52 bomber has been the nucleus of the U.S. Strategic Air Command for over 30 years. Climb aboard this aviational legend. Next on Firepower.